And joining us now in the studio are Maung Zarni. He's a Burmese dissident and the co-author of The Slow-Burning Genocide of Myanmar's Rohingya, a policy journal published by the University of Washington, and by Selman Aksunger. He is the co-founder and chairman of the board of directors at the Istanbul Center for International Law. Thank you for both of you for being here. Let's begin with you. You've been living in exile, Maung, in the UK for many years. Tell us about the motivation in Myanmar against, or the Myanmar leadership against the Rohingya. What are their grievances for the state?
Well, the states want to annihilate the Rohingya population as a group. So any act of atrocities, whatever the legal name, that have been committed against the Rohingya people, they are committed because they are members of this Rohingya ethnic group. And that alone raises the issue of group persecution. And when the intent of that persecution can be established as nothing less than extermination, the way that Nazi Germany went after the Jews in all Nazi-occupied Europe.
Let's pull back a bit. I want to bring in Selman here. Selman, the report itself, very clearly calling it genocide, that the Myanmar authorities have committed four out of 5 crimes that constitute as genocide. Tell us about the legal standing of this UN document.
All right. So the document is providing us the enough evidences that the crime of genocide, crime against humanity and war crimes has committed by the Burmese military officials and soldiers against the Rohingyans. The crime against humanity and war crimes are the crimes that has already been clearly seen by the international community. But this report, the distinct feature of this report is the first time clearly providing evidences where the genocidal intent has been used against the Rohingyans. So the distinct feature of genocide, crime of genocide, is that the crime of genocide can only be committed by genocidal intent. There is a specific intent here. In legal terms, this has been called as dolus specialis. So this specific intent has to be proved in order to accuse someone as genocider. And it's not an easy thing because no government will provide you enough information or evidences about how they commit this genocide or where those genocidal intent has come from.
I just want to bring in some of these for our viewers from this UN report, and it says that mothers were gang raped in front of young children who were severely injured and in some instances killed. This is part of the testimony, the official record. The survivors say that the soldiers taunted them, saying, "We are going to kill you this way by raping you." Maung.
Well, I think, the report focuses not only on the first act of genocide as defined by the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. The first one is direct killing of members of the group. And there are 4 types: ethnic, racial, national, and religious group. And then Rohingyas are considered a protected group under international law. But the report goes back to the early part of 1960s when the military took over the country and began to move towards what later became a genocidal direction. And then, Professor Amartya Sen, and a leading expert, world's leading expert on famine, the Nobel Prize winner in economics at Harvard, he said it very specifically, and he said, if you deny people access to food, access to employment, access to health services, primary health services or emergency health services, or access to your sources of food like, fish, like ponds and, like fields, your intent is very clear. We are biological beings. We have to eat. We have to have access to drinking water. If a state like Myanmar deliberately design policies and conditions in which Rohingyas will not have enough nutritional sources
and
to
this
survive.
This is exactly what the report
that
states,
that
there was a concerted effort to deny them employment, to deny them livelihoods, to basically keep them in their homes or drive them out. And what that has resulted in, according to this report, is over 1,700 Rohingya fleeing across the border into Bangladesh every month in 2018. What can the United Nations or the international community do after this document
so the commission
to hold these people accountable?
Yeah. So the report itself suggests that the international community should keep up working on accounting those people who are the most senior official and members of the military. So now it is up to the United Nations to refer the United Nations Security Council either to refer this situation to the International Criminal Court or establish a new court. In order to refer this situation to International Criminal Court, the concurring votes of the 5 permanent members is required.
Before I open it to Maung, this is what the US Secretary of State Pompeo tweeted just before or around the time this report came out a year ago. Following deadly militant attack, security forces responded by launching abhorrent ethnic cleansing of ethnic Rohingya in Burma. The US will continue to hold those responsible accountable. What can the US do? As Selman mentioned, if the Chinese have a veto power in the UN Security Council, in the UN General Assembly, what can this report or just a document amount to?
Yeah, I totally agree with Simon when it says, when he said, you know, the establishment of an accountability mechanism in the form of either ICC or the ad hoc, you know, International Tribunal of Myanmar, like what the UN had done for Yugoslavia and Rwanda. The problem is focusing only on accountability and justice is this. We still have 500,000 Rohingya people inside Myanmar, 100,000 plus in internally displaced camps that have been kept since 2012 violence, and then 1 million Rohingyas on the Bangladeshi soil living in subhuman conditions. None of us, you or I, will want our families to be in that scenario. So we have over, let's just say, close to 2 million people, extremely vulnerable to further attacks. And so what Rohingya needs is international intervention, international protection. Help. By the time international court arrives, most of the Rohingyas would have been driven out. That is why the
and that's why a lot of these efforts are being focused from the UN, from international players. In Bangladesh, for example, where the largest camp for refugees in the world right now is in Cox's Bazar. Turkey's position, Turkey's taken a big role in trying to help.
International community can make actually can follow 4 basic ways. One way is, as I already mentioned, the referring situation into the Security Council, so that Turkey and the other states in the region can push the Security Council to refer the situation to International Criminal Court. Establishing a new court, such as International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda and Yugoslavia, seems to me a not plausible option, simply because establishing such courts is also requiring the full consent and concurring votes of the Security Council. And establishing such courts
requires so the Yugoslavia Bosnia Tribunal is out, Rwanda model is out.
Yeah, because if you want to establish such a court, you need more resources, more time. In order to prepare such court, establish such court, you need a new statute, new rules of procedure, new definitions. So it requires so much time and effort and also so much resources. Instead, referring this situation by Security Council referral to the International Criminal Court is an easier option.
An interesting bit in the report, which a lot of people probably don't realize, is that the UN criticized Facebook.
Yeah.
In fact, the investigators sharply criticized Facebook because it was used to spread false news, fake news, threats and intimidation against the minority.
I mean, lost in the focus on the genocide and accountability here is 2 things. One is the role of the Facebook and its failure, and also the culpability of the civilian leadership, whose failures
Aung San Suu Kyi has been criticized.
Active cover-up. Aung San Suu Kyi doesn't control the military and security forces, but she controls...
Was she used? No. Was she used by the military, you think?
Well, they are using
because
each other.
she's, you know, Nobel Peace
No, she
Prize,
has to. No,
spent years under house arrest.
My late grandfather, great uncle, was her father's roommate, and I have enormous love and respect for the family. But she has become the most polished, dishonest mouthpiece for the Burmese military, which her father founded. Now, I think like my final comment would be, the report also indicts the United Nations as a whole. After what happened in Sri Lanka, you know, in the last phase of the war, thousands of women were raped, Jaffna, and the Ban Ki-moon, then Secretary General, brought in a new approach called human rights upfront, rights first, development and other issues second. United Nations, all the agencies, UNHCR, UNDP, World Food Program in Myanmar, in Rangoon, they are collaborating with the Burmese military. They are collaborating with Aung San Suu Kyi. This report, if you read it carefully, indicts the United Nations as a whole in its failure. UN is at best genocide bystander. Turkey should be stepping up in providing leadership, you know, call for an international conference to determine the future of Rohingya people. Put together a coalition of mid-range powers around the world to try to figure out what type of protection regime might be established for Rohingya. Let me tell you, as a Burmese Buddhist and from a military family, Rohingyas have no future insofar as this military is in power and the public mind is not changed. And there are no signs, absolutely no signs there. The Burmese society and in all pillars, monks, soldiers, politicians, intellectuals, and the public will not accept and integrate Rohingyas as our own people as they were before. Therefore, international protection is sorely and urgently needed.
Thank you so much. On that note, strong words, Maung Zarni and Selman, Aksunger, thank you.
Thank you for having us.